what can we do to assist you to sort this problem out?
Well, we are in crisis, but the problem is that they look at the judicial branch as another branch as an agency of the government. And the problem is with funding. They're cutting, we having cutbacks every year. In fact, our judicial system has not gotten a raise over the last several years. And so every year we find ourselves requiring to have to do more with less. And as far as the solution goes, the only solution would be for our state government to fully fund the judicial branch. The judicial branch is not a financial drain on the system. We're actually making money for the system. So it seems to be a little bit unfair, if you will, for us to be getting cutbacks after cutbacks after cutbacks when we're actually putting money into the system. So as far as the judicial system is concerned, we are holding our end of the bargain. We are making money in the state. And so it's a little disheartening and sometimes a morale problem when we find ourselves seeing cutbacks, our staff's not getting raises and things like that.
Thank you, Mr. DeAngelo.
I don't believe it's the judicial system's job to make up money for the state, although they do produce money for the state. We have felt the brunt in my family personally, though, from the cutbacks that have been plaguing the judicial system. My wife is a district court clerk here in Mobile County, and just a few years back, when layoffs were instituted because of the cutbacks being made, she actually was laid off, and for several months, or at least a few months, before being able to be rehired on. So that definitely put a strain on our family. And as far as, I think the only thing that can be done to alleviate this is cutting some of the pork in Montgomery from some of the other programs that our government's funding.
Amen.
It's not going to be by cutting money from the judicial branch.
That's it.
Let me just follow up on that. Let me start with you, Judge Rowe. What is your assessment of how the negative impact in terms of, delayed justice is really no justice? I mean, what's your sense of that?
Delayed justice? Well, it's interesting you say that, Lou, because Judge Hardison just gave me some statistics I was looking at earlier. And the filings in for the year 2013, there were roughly 1,066 filings in the civil division with 1,080 dispositions. In the criminal, this is per judge. This is an average per judge. We've got 4 judges, and each judge averaged filing assigned to that judge 4,019 cases, and dispositions 4,118 cases. So the cases are getting filed and getting disposed of. I think the delay in justice you're talking about probably doesn't happen at the district court level. You probably see it at the circuit court level.
Mr. DeAngelo.
Well, I think you can prove anything with statistics, and those numbers don't say that the case that was filed was the case that was disposed of. They could have had a case that was filed this year, but the case that was disposed of was started off 2 years ago, and I think that's what's happening in the district courts and the circuit courts because of the backlog. And I do believe that justice delayed is justice denied. We have constitutional rights that guarantee defendants a speedy trial, but oftentimes victims are overlooked. And I think that's a very big problem in our courtrooms right now, is undue continuances being granted, and that is the justice delay. We are continually having these continuances in cases. You have victims who lose interest, you have witnesses who will fail to appear eventually, and because of this, you have people getting away with crime.
Thank you. Let me just let the audience know that these 2 candidates went through an interview with the AL.com very recently. So I'm taking some of what was said there and applying it in my own way to what's going on. Okay. This next question really kind of comes right back to what we were just talking about, though, and it goes to one of the questions that they get asked you: does Mobile County need more judges? So, Mr. DeAngelo, it's your turn.
Hey, did I go off? I got a little bit of microphone problem. Absolutely, they do need more judges. There has been a study, and I need to go back and look, but I was just reading it about a month or so ago. It was a 2000, that was the most recent one, was a 2007 study that looked at all of the courtrooms and all of the caseloads throughout Alabama and made recommendations as to where the judgeships should be allocated. And Mobile was one of the counties where one of the judgeships was, an additional judgeship was recommended to be moved. But an act of the legislature is required of that, and the Alabama Supreme Court has been asking for that every year. They just have not gotten it. But absolutely, Mobile needs another district court judge.
Okay. Judge Jones.
Mr. D'Angelo is absolutely correct on that. We've been actually allocated 3 judgeships. We've been allocated 2 circuit court judgeships and 1 district court judgeship. And the reason why we haven't got it is because of the politics in Montgomery. We understand that if you look at statistically, this happens in a DA's office and it happens on the bench. We dispose of just as many cases in Mobile County as are disposed of in Jefferson County. The only difference is we have 4 district court judges, they have 9. We have 9 circuit court judges, they have 23. So you do the math, you understand, we are entitled to have more judgeships given to us. The problem is, it's just a logjam in Montgomery. The politics are such that Jefferson County is not going to part with those 3 judges. Actually, I think there were 5 judgeships that were supposed to be reallocated. Mobile County was going to get 3. Madison County is going to get 2. 4 were going to come from Jefferson County. I think maybe 1 from Walker County, but it just hasn't happened.
Let me just follow up on this, because, I mean, you're suggesting that the solution is in Montgomery. Well, Senator Hightower is back there. Have either of you spoken, thank you, very good for Senator Hightower. He's running, but not tonight. Have you all spoken to your elected representatives, whether it's Senator Hightower or Mr. Sessions or whoever, in regards to, dealing with this problem and making sure that they know how serious it is? Just start with you, Mr. D'Angelo.
I'll be quite honest, I haven't, but I'd like to get to be a judge first, because I think my weight carries a little more, or my word would carry a little more weight if I'm the first to judge. But I haven't spoken to him about this.
Okay. Judge?
Well, first of all, let me say this. I don't think we're going to have a finer state senator than Senator Bill Hightower. He's done an excellent job for us and continues to do that. I think sometimes he's voice crying in the wilderness, but he's a man of integrity, and we ought to be proud of having him as a state senator. That being said, I have not talked to Senator Hightower about this particular problem, because this is being handled through the District Court Association and the Circuit Court Association. They're dealing with Montgomery. They're going through the proper channels to see if that can be rectified. I have had the pleasure of talking to Senator Hightower about some other legislative changes I think might be helping our system.
Senator Hightower, can I put you on the spot? Is this an issue that has come to your attention in terms of court funding, lack of funding, improving judges, more judges down here?
Let me add 2 things. A fellow senator, you want me to come up?
I hate to put you on the spot, but I mean, this is the point of what we're doing.
The process for judicial appointments comes from Judge Roy Moore. He's the one that does that. In our latest session, a colleague of mine attempted to instead pass legislation which would enable him legislatively to have another judge. We need 6.5 judges to fill our need here in Mobile. We're the first on the list. So when I saw him do that, I went to him and I said, I'm going to stop you from passing that legislation because you're going to take one of our judges. So in that respect, I tried to protect us. But we still need judges, and we're next in line for an appointment. But we need 6.5 judges in order to meet the need. Just give us 1 or 2, give us something. And I think Judge Moore is working on that. Last year, he had a staff come down, talk to me, talk to other legislators about an appointment and a special appointment. That unfortunately didn't work out. But I feel like he has the need, he understands the need, and he's focusing upon it, and he'll address it. But I'm always available to talk further about it. But we got to do it the right way. You can't circumvent the process. I don't believe that's proper.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Well, again, I mean, as citizens, we all have a role to play in this. And so if there is this question, then we need to be alert to it and start moving in the direction to make sure that those people in Montgomery, whether it's Judge Moore or, you know, our legislature, we need to make sure that they are moving in the right direction. So, Judge.
Lou had, Judge Hardison gave me these, just so it follows up on what Senator Hightower was saying. On the average, filings per judge in civil cases in Mobile County, 1,066 statewide, 424. And if you do on the filings on the criminal side, 4,019, average statewide, 1,459. So we're carrying the water.
The next question that was asked during your interview was, what causes the most inefficiencies in district court? Now, we've covered some of this, but thinking through the responses that have been done right now, and Judge York, it's your turn to start. What basically would you argue is causing the most inefficiencies in this question of delayed justice? If you want to just tackle that.
Well, I appreciate that, Lou. I think if you look at the job that our clerk's office is doing and our judicial assistants are doing, the DAs, the law enforcement community, the lawyers that practice in our courts, and everybody having to do what they have to do, there's so many moving parts on criminal dockets. We average 50 to 75 cases per day, 4 days a week, 50 weeks a year. That's thousands of cases that we're handling per year per judge. And so I can truthfully say that our clerk's office, our judicial assistants are doing a marvelous job of making this system run as efficiently as it can. It doesn't mean there aren't some hiccups. It doesn't mean that there's a case or two that could be moved faster. But overall, when you consider the mission of our law enforcement officers, they can't be in court every day. A lot of times you may have a particular deputy that needs to be in our court, but he's also appearing over in federal court testifying. You can't be two places at one time. That ends up the case being what he said. You also have situations where the defense counsel might be sick and he can't make it to court. It needs to be reset. But by and large, those cases move. And if you look at the statistic, those cases that are being filed are being moved almost on a 1-to-1 ratio. So I think the hats off to our clerk's office, our judicial assistants, our DA, and to the law enforcement community as well as the attorneys that do making it happen.
Thank you, Mr. D'Angelo.
Well, I'll go back to what I said in the beginning. The greatest inefficiency in district courts and of all the courts are the continuances. You would see a greater number of cases go through those, and I understand there's always going to be exceptions, and there's going to be times when continuances have to be granted, but I believe they're granted far too often, and even though it's the defendants that are guaranteed this right to speedy trial, victims are not being given enough attention and care by the courts, and that's creating the backlog. And I think we'd see less of a backlog if we were having less continuances. Another thing is our courts have been moved to a paperless system, but it's almost in word only because though we have electronic files, everything, much of the things are still being printed off just for referrals. And I think to truly create we want to go to a seamless system where you're using tablets as your paper and everything is electronic, so that everything works together and you don't have duplication of efforts.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with you on this one, Mr. D'Angelo. This question did come up in your interview with the press register, and there's a two-part to this. One has to do with how's the court dealing with mental health issues on a district level, but my addition to that is, what are your thoughts about the special courts for veterans? Please talk about both.
Okay. The courts, I think, could do better in dealing with mental health individuals. I do believe that we've become more aware of, particularly as the defendants that we're looking at, and mental health being an issue, but I don't think that we have enough programs, and I don't think programs after programs is always the answer, but we do need to have something instituted. And as I stated over at the press register interview, I would work to have Alta Point there, or some other type of mental health agency there. And I would want to work right away doing that. And if you know, I know funding is always a problem, but you can work with council and with the defendants and see if they can fund it. But that's something that I would work on right away, to try to have mental health representatives present in the court. As far as the Veterans Court, I'm all for it, especially, I've heard that, it was going to be funded, by the Veterans Administration, so that it didn't require state funds. But, I don't want to, if we're talking about veteran defendants, I don't want to forget about victims of crime. And what about veteran victims? I don't, so that's great, because I believe the veterans tie in with the mental health issue. But we never want to overlook our victims in these crimes.
Okay.
Thank you. So, Joe?
Well, you touched on two things. The first thing with the mental health court, one of the problems you're gonna run into there with the mental health court, if you establish one, there are courts available nationwide for mental health issues, but that is going to increase our tax dollars, because it's going to cost the state of Alabama money to institute a mental health court, if you will. I'm all for it, and certainly our antennas are up. We're looking for ways to make that happen. But right now, with cutbacks and things of that nature, particularly in mental health, it feels very difficult to have a mental health court system put into place at this point in time. Doesn't mean you can't deal with mental health issues, you can, but with cutbacks, it makes it increasingly more difficult. What you have said about the Veterans Court, though, that's something that's very dear and dear to my heart, because we are actually in the planning stage of having a Veterans Court, and we're hoping to have that on the ground in July of this year. We hope to have our first Veterans Court. Veterans coming back from combat have certain issues that other people don't have. It could be that what they're exposed to in combat might have triggered something in them that might have caused them to engage in criminal activity or behavior. If that is the case, if it's service-related, that needs to be dealt with. The beauty of this is the Veterans Court will not cost the state one dime, because the VA will handle all the issues on as far as treating post-traumatic stress disorder and other anxiety disorders. And we already have the drug court system in place, which can handle the legal side. It is absolutely a marriage made in heaven, and looking forward to getting that first court going in July.
Thank you. Mr. Yeah, this one goes to Judge Ray. What will you do about prison overcrowding?
That is a great question. I think at this point in time, kudos ought to go to Sheriff Cochran. He has a work release program in place. Qualified inmates are, if they qualify, they're allowed to participate in the work release program. The benefit of that is that prisoner is paying for the cost of his incarceration. And that's what we need to do, because the problem with overcrowding is not going to go away unless you find more ways to house these people. And the only way that's going to happen is for those prisoners that qualify, not talking about violent offenders, but the ones that are nonviolent offenders actually being encouraged and maybe sometimes required to go out and pay for their upkeep. The Fourth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment, the amendment is cruel and unusual punishment. In my interpretation, that does not prohibit requiring an inmate to work. And so the overcrowding can be handled by requiring the inmates that can work to pay for their upkeep. And we're seeing that happen with what Sheriff Cochran's doing at the local level. And I really think we can put that in place at the state level. And I really think that will help address the problems of overcrowding. The problems that we have right now with the jail system is a lot of times, despite the best efforts of the Sheriff's Department and the Mobile Police Department and other law enforcement groups, is that they are working very hard to put people away. The DA's office putting people away. They'll send somebody for 10 years and they're out walking the streets in a matter of months. That's a problem that comes back to the overcrowding, and that's got to be addressed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. D'Angelo.
Well, I'm all for having inmates go out and work to earn the pay, but they have to go back somewhere. And so I don't know that it's going to alleviate jail overcrowding, or prison overcrowding for that matter, but we've always had work release, or we've had it for quite a long time, ever since I've been practicing law. I think the way that the courts can assess or can address prison overcrowding, because there's a lot more than the courts that are responsible, or actually more so than you're going to have the legislature and Department of Corrections that are really going to have to get into that to address prison overcrowding. But the way the courts can address it is by the meat and potatoes of what the court does, and that's better discernment of the defendants and the criminals that are coming before them. right now, there's overcrowding because we have a lot of drug defendants in there that are being sent there when they maybe should be in an alternative program. And while we have violent criminals being set loose, that's the problem. We've got to do a better job of taking time with these defendants when they're in front of the court, looking at their histories, seeing who poses a true danger to the community, putting that one in jail, and looking at the ones who are the first-time offenders who are on maybe a theft or something like that maybe have a better chance of rehabilitation, and putting them on the outside in a structured program.
This is another audience question, and this will go to Mr. D'Angelo first. What is your background in legal practice that qualifies you or prepares you to be a judge? This is for both candidates.
I'll tell you my background in legal practice, but I'm going to tell you my background because it's more than my legal practice. Because everything about me has prepared me to be a judge. And specifically, this judge. As I told you in the beginning, I've been practicing law for 16 years. My practice has focused on criminal law, and as you've heard from these questions, over 80% of the caseload in the district courts is criminal law. And it does have there's a civil element. Once every 4 weeks, there's civil dockets dealing with matters of $10,000 or less, and some unlawful detainer actions. But by and large, this is criminal matters. I've dealt with criminal law for 16 years, and that's a specific type of law practice that I'm very familiar with, and that has prepared me for district court. But more than that, I have the advantage of having been a professional firefighter and paramedic who has responded to these scenes for the last 6 years. I've been on these scenes with police officers, working these murders, working these domestic violences and assaults, having to patch up these victims who have been shot and stabbed and bring them to the hospital. I know what this is like from the streets, as well as practicing as a criminal defense attorney and a prosecutor. That's what has prepared me to be a judge.
Thank you.
In 1981, I received my law degree from Tillman Law School. I started off with a corporate real estate firm. I worked there for 2.5 years, where I learned a lot of the type of law that we deal with in district court every day with unlawful detainment and things of that nature, which are nuances which you have to know in order to be a district court judge. Also, during that time, I took appointments to gain litigation experience. I did criminal defense work as a criminal defense lawyer. During that same period of time, working in that same firm to get litigation experience. I did that for 2.5 years. Then I joined a litigation firm where I practiced trial work for 4 years in 1987. Went out along in general practice. I was one of the first 2 mediators certified in 1988. From 1988 to the early 90s, a substantial part of my practice was in dispute resolution, so that helped prepare me to what I do on the bench every day. In 1995, I did that from up until the time I was appointed to the bench in October of 2012 by Governor Bentley. Since that time, if you take a look at the statistics, and these are averages, but based on our filings, the average per judge in the year of 2013 alone, I disposed of approximately 1,000 civil cases, and I disposed of approximately over 4,000 criminal cases. So as far as the experience goes, I think this 1.5 years, having these thousands of cases have given me the experience necessary to do this job.
Thank you very much. I have one more question, and this is not an audience question. It has to do with the Second Amendment. You were asked this question during your interview. Are you satisfied with the state of Alabama's gun laws? So Judge York will take, you go first on this one, and then Mr. D'Angelo. Are you satisfied with the state of Alabama's gun laws?
No, I'm satisfied with the laws themselves. I'm not satisfied with necessarily the application of those. But the concern that I have, and I think what Sheriff Cochran alluded to in the initial debate, was the fact that in just about every single drug case that we see, we find there's a weapon there. And that is a problem. And as far as the Second Amendment is concerned, I fully embrace the Second Amendment. I fully embrace the citizen's right to keep and bear arms. And that should never be taken away from our citizens. But on the other hand, we've got to find a way to get the guns out of the hands of the people that don't need to have those guns. And I think what we need to do is we need to have tougher sentences on people who commit crimes with guns, and they need to be mandatory sentences, not something discretionary to the court, mandatory sentences to go up. When these young people and these criminals have guns, it needs to be dealt with harshly. That does not, in fact, like I said, at all, in any way, shape, or form, my view towards the Second Amendment, because I fully embrace our right to keep and bear arms and fully defend that law.
Thank you, Mr. D'Angelo.
I think Judge Jordan's answer has changed since our last meeting where you called for stricter laws. I do not call for stricter laws. I'm very satisfied with the laws as they are. That's the same answer I gave at the press register interview. I believe we had to have stricter enforcement of our existing laws. And there are plenty of laws on the books right now where we seize any gun that's used in a crime. It's a felony for any felon to be in possession of any firearm. There are so many restrictions. Someone posted this on Alabama.com afterwards and commenting about that very question, and I brought up a site to him that the Attorney General had online where it's 29 pages of gun laws in Alabama. So we have very restrictive gun laws in Alabama. It's also a matter of enforcing them. If we choose to enforce the laws as we have them, we'll keep them out of the wrong hands. But I can tell you this, if a criminal wants to have a gun, he's going to get a gun. There's no stopping that. But if we continue to impose new laws, we're going to keep guns away from law-abiding citizens who want to hunt and want to own weapons for their own self-defense, to defend themselves in their home. They're guaranteed by our Second Amendment.
Okay, we've come to the end of the question period, and now Judge York, you'll go first on the ending part where you will ask the voters for their support.
Thank you, Luke. In October of 2012, when Judge Michael McMakin had retired from the bench, Governor Bentley appointed me to take this place, and since that time I've been sitting as the district court judge in Mobile County. Since that time, as I've mentioned to you, we average 50 to 75 cases a day, 50 weeks a year, 4 days a week, 50 weeks a year. So literally presided over thousands of criminal and civil cases since I have taken the bench. That means that we, in the district court, we handle the initial, most of the search warrants come to us. We handle the initial bond hearings. I've set hundreds of bonds. We handle the preliminary hearings and arraignments. I've handled hundreds of preliminary hearings and arraignments. I've sentenced hundreds of people to jail or probation, and if necessary, I have revoked those bonds, I have revoked those probations. I have that combined with the number of years I practiced as a lawyer for over 31 years, I was a practice of varied specialties in general practice, ranging from criminal defense to civil litigation to corporate work. I represented small businesses and corporate matters. I have a wide range of experience, and I bring that experience to the bench. What I'm asking the citizens of Mobile County to do is to share, to join with the faith that Judge Bentley had in me in October of 2012, and is to support me by voting for me on June the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. D'Angelo.
First, thank you once again for being here. I'll tell you this, I may not be the smoothest talker around. I'm a blue-collar guy who happened to go to law school. I've worked my whole life, and I'm a working man right now. But I do bring to the bench experience, and experience with a particular kind of law that's going to be in front of the court, day in and day out, every day. I know how to deal with the problem, and I don't owe anyone any favors. I owe my community my service. That's why I came here. I felt a calling from God that He steered me here after giving me my life experiences as a criminal lawyer, as a criminal defense, as a prosecutor, and then as a firefighter and paramedic, seeing these things on the street. I know I have that unique perspective that really no other attorney will ever bring to the bench. And if you will just put me in office on June the 3rd, you will see that revolving door stop. That's what I have campaigned on from the beginning. It is the meat and potatoes of what the district court is about. The bonds that are being set and the criminals that are being let go too easily on too low of bonds without enough restrictions, and the bonds are not being revoked timely when they're committing new crimes. That will end in my courtroom.
Amen.
If you care about your families, and you care about this Mobile community, and you want it to be a safer place to live in, then I ask for your support on June 3rd and voting me into office. Thank you. Thank you very much.